What if the injustice you see today is only the beginning of a story that hasn't finished unfolding? What if every small choice you make, seen or unseen, is quietly shaping a future you cannot yet see? Stay with this story, because the ending may change how you see your entire life. There is a quiet truth about life that many people only recognize when it is already too late. At first glance, it seems harmless. Just a small choice, a minor decision. Something so ordinary that it hardly deserves attention. But sometimes, years later, when a person looks back at the road their life has taken, they suddenly realize something unsettling. The moment that shaped everything did not feel important at all when it happened. It was small, almost invisible, and yet it quietly determined the direction of their future. This is the part that many people find difficult to accept. Because when we look around at the world, life does not always appear to follow any clear sense of justice. You may have seen someone who is sincere, kind, and respectful toward others, yet their life seems filled with obstacles. They work hard, they try to do the right thing, but success always seems just out of reach. At the same time, there are people who manipulate, deceive, or take advantage of others, and yet their lives appear comfortable, even prosperous. If you witness this contradiction often enough, a quiet doubt begins to form. Is life truly fair? Do honesty and integrity actually matter? Or is the world secretly ruled by something else, something colder, something more cynical? For many people, this doubt slowly changes the way they live. They begin to believe that kindness is naive. They start to think honesty is a disadvantage, and little by little, without realizing it, they begin to compromise the very principles they once believed in. But long before modern debates about success and morality, ancient thinkers quietly observed something different about the way life unfolds. They noticed that the universe often moves according to patterns that are not immediately visible. Patterns that do not rush. Patterns that do not announce themselves. But patterns that, over time, prove to be remarkably precise. Welcome to Daily Soul Compass. If you are someone who enjoys exploring the deeper patterns of life, the quiet forces that shape human destiny, and the timeless wisdom hidden inside everyday experiences, consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps this channel continue creating thoughtful videos like this one. Now, before we go any further, take a moment to reflect on a simple but profound question. Which of these ideas do you believe is closer to the truth? A. Life has no real pattern of cause and effect. Success and failure are mostly a matter of luck and circumstance. B. Cause and effect always exist, but human beings often lack the patience to see the full process unfold. Take a moment to think about it and share your answer by commenting A or B below. Your perspective may be very different from someone else's, and that's exactly what makes this conversation meaningful. If we step back from the question we just explored, another realization slowly begins to emerge. Perhaps the problem is not that cause and effect fails to exist, but that we rarely understand how quietly and patiently it works. To understand this more clearly, imagine something simple that happens in nature every day. A person plants a seed in the ground. On the surface, nothing appears to change. The soil looks the same as it did before. Days pass, sometimes even weeks, and there is still no visible sign that anything is happening. If someone were to look at that small patch of earth, they might assume the effort was pointless. Perhaps the seed never grew. Perhaps it failed entirely. But beneath the surface, a different story is unfolding. The seed has already begun to transform. Its outer shell cracks open, releasing something fragile and alive. Tiny roots begin to push downward into the soil, searching for stability. At the same time, a delicate shoot slowly reaches upward, instinctively moving toward the light it cannot yet see. None of this is visible from above, and yet this hidden stage is the most important part of the entire process. Without it, the tree that will one day grow strong and tall could never exist. Human behavior follows a remarkably similar pattern. Every thought we repeat, every word we speak, and every action we take quietly plants something into the landscape of our lives. Some of those seeds reveal their results quickly. A harsh remark can damage a relationship in a single moment. A generous gesture can immediately brighten someone's day. But many seeds do not reveal themselves so quickly. A habit of cutting corners may seem harmless when it happens only once. A small act of dishonesty might go completely unnoticed. Nothing dramatic happens afterward. Life continues as usual. Because there is no immediate consequence, it becomes easy to assume that the action carried no real weight. Yet beneath the surface, subtle changes have already begun. Trust shifts, sometimes so slightly that no one can name the moment it happened. Perceptions adjust. Impressions form quietly in the minds of others. These changes are rarely dramatic, but they accumulate. This is one of the most important characteristics of cause and effect. It works through accumulation rather than sudden events. Rarely does a single action determine a person's fate. Instead, it is the steady repetition of small patterns that gradually shapes the direction of a life. A person who consistently honors their commitments slowly becomes known as dependable. At first, this reputation may seem insignificant, but over time it grows into something powerful. People begin to rely on that person. Opportunities begin to appear, not because of luck, but because trust has quietly taken root. The opposite pattern can also develop just as quietly. Small inconsistencies repeated often enough begin to form a different reputation. People may not confront the behavior directly, but they adjust their expectations. They stop depending on that person in important moments. Doors that might have opened begin to remain closed. From the outside, these changes can appear mysterious. Success and failure seem to arrive suddenly, almost without warning. But if we look carefully, we begin to see that the visible outcome was only the final stage of a process that had been unfolding for a long time. Sometimes the clearest way to recognize this process is not through theory, but through an ordinary story from everyday life, where a small decision slowly grows into consequences far larger than anyone expected. And sometimes the easiest way to understand an invisible law is to watch it unfold quietly inside an ordinary human story. In a modest neighborhood market, there once lived a man who owned a small grocery shop. It was not a large business, nor was it particularly famous, but it had something more valuable than size or reputation. It had trust. Every morning before the sun fully rose, the shop owner would unlock the doors and begin arranging the goods for the day. Fresh produce, rice, cooking oil, small household necessities, everything was placed neatly on the shelves. When the first customers arrived, they were greeted with a calm smile and a respectful nod. People in the neighborhood appreciated his consistency. They saw a man who worked hard, who opened his shop early and closed it late, and who seemed genuinely committed to serving his community. Over time, the shop became a familiar part of daily life. Families stopped by on their way home from work. Elderly neighbors visited to pick up a few essentials. Children came in with small coins to buy snacks. Slowly but steadily, the shop built a loyal circle of customers. For a while, everything seemed stable. But like many small businesses, the shop began to face pressures that the owner had not expected. Suppliers raised their prices. Rent gradually increased. Some weeks were busy, but the profits never seemed to stretch far enough to cover everything comfortably. One evening, after closing the shop and reviewing the numbers, a quiet thought appeared in his mind. When customers bought products that required weighing, rice, vegetables, dried goods, the difference between one measurement and another could be extremely small. Just a few grams one way or the other could barely be noticed. He wondered what might happen if the scale showed just slightly less product than it should. Not enough to be obvious, just a tiny difference. If each sale included that small adjustment, the extra profit might slowly accumulate and ease the pressure on his business. At first, the idea unsettled him. The shop had been built on the trust of the people who came through the door every day. But the worries about expenses continued to grow, and the thought returned again and again. Eventually, he convinced himself it was harmless. Everyone bends the rules a little, he reasoned. No one will notice such a small difference. The first time he did it, he felt a brief wave of discomfort, but nothing happened. The customer paid and left exactly as before. The shop remained quiet. No questions were asked. The second time felt easier. Soon it became a habit so small that he barely thought about it. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. From the outside, the shop appeared unchanged. People still came and went. Transactions continued. Life seemed normal, but something subtle had begun to shift. Occasionally, a customer would purchase similar items from another store and notice that the quantity seemed slightly larger. At first, they dismissed the difference. But when it happened more than once, a quiet doubt began to form. No one accused the shop owner directly. No one created a confrontation. Instead, people simply made small adjustments of their own. Some customers began visiting other shops more often. Others stopped coming entirely. New customers who tried the store once did not feel compelled to return. The change happened gradually, almost invisibly. The shop owner did not immediately understand what was happening. Each individual day still seemed ordinary. But when he finally looked at the numbers months later, the pattern had become undeniable. Sales were shrinking. Expenses remained. The business that once felt stable was slowly slipping away. Eventually, after a long period of struggle, the shop closed its doors. To those who asked, the owner simply sighed and said that his luck had run out. But if we look more closely, it becomes clear that luck had very little to do with it. What actually disappeared was something far more valuable. Trust had been leaving, little by little, for a very long time. And when we look at a story like this with patience, a deeper question naturally begins to arise. How many of the outcomes in our own lives are also the result of patterns we barely noticed while they were forming? It is easy to believe that life changes because of dramatic turning points. A major opportunity appears, a mistake is made, or a sudden event shifts everything in a new direction. These moments are memorable, so we often treat them as the true causes of success or failure. But when we observe more carefully, we begin to see something quieter and far more powerful. Most lives are not shaped by a single decision. They are shaped by habits, small, repeated actions that slowly form the foundation of who we become. A person does not earn the trust of others overnight. Trust grows gradually through countless ordinary interactions. A promise that is kept when it would have been easier to forget. A responsibility fulfilled even when no one is watching. A moment when honesty is chosen, even though dishonesty might bring a quick advantage. Each of these moments seems small on its own, yet together they begin to create a pattern that others can feel. Over time, people learn what to expect from us. They decide whether we are reliable, whether we are sincere, whether we are worthy of their confidence. This is how reputations are built, not through grand declarations, but through quiet consistency. The same principle applies in the opposite direction as well. Rarely does someone lose the respect of others because of a single mistake. More often, respect fades slowly when small compromises become habits. Each compromise may appear insignificant in isolation, but when they repeat often enough, they begin to reveal a pattern that others cannot ignore. Eventually, that pattern shapes the opportunities that appear or fail to appear in a person's life. Seen from the outside, these outcomes can look like fortune or misfortune. One individual seems to attract support, trust, and cooperation wherever they go. Another struggles to gain the same confidence, even when they try to change. But when we trace the path backward, we often discover that these differences were formed quietly, through thousands of small choices made over many years. This understanding reveals something both sobering and hopeful. It reminds us that we are constantly shaping the conditions of our future, even in moments that feel ordinary. The tone of our words, the integrity of our actions, the way we treat those who may never repay us, these things leave impressions that gradually accumulate. Some of those impressions will grow into opportunities. Others may grow into barriers. Yet the hopeful part of this realization is just as important as the warning it contains. If small actions repeated over time can lead to difficulty, then small actions repeated with care can also create something strong and lasting. A life rarely changes through one dramatic decision. More often, it changes when a person quietly chooses, again and again, to live with a little more honesty, a little more patience, and a little more responsibility than the moment requires. And if there is one question worth carrying forward from this reflection, it may be this. If the habits you practice today continued to guide your choices for the next 10 years, what kind of life would they slowly build around you? As we come to the end of this reflection, one truth quietly emerges from everything we have explored. Life rarely forgets the seeds we plant. The ancient wisdom that says you reap what you sow is not merely a poetic saying, but a profound observation about how human actions shape destiny over time. Every word we speak, every intention we carry, and every action we take becomes a small cause that eventually forms an effect. Sometimes the result appears quickly, but more often it unfolds slowly, quietly, weaving itself into the fabric of our lives. In today's fast-paced world, people often expect immediate results. When kindness is not immediately rewarded, or when wrongdoing seems to go unpunished, many begin to doubt whether justice truly exists in the universe. But the deeper lesson of cause and effect teaches patience. Just as a seed does not become a tree overnight, the consequences of our actions require time to mature. What we see today is often the result of choices made long ago, and the choices we make today will shape the circumstances we encounter tomorrow. The most powerful realization is that this law does not exist to punish us, but to guide us. It gently reminds us that we are not powerless passengers in life. Instead, we are constant creators of our future. When we act with honesty, compassion, and responsibility, we are planting seeds that will eventually grow into trust, peace, and meaningful relationships. When we choose integrity, even when no one is watching, we are quietly building a life that stands on solid ground. Applying this wisdom in modern life is simpler than it may appear. It begins with small, conscious choices. Speak truthfully, even when exaggeration would be easier. Treat others with respect even when they cannot repay you. Work diligently even when recognition is delayed. These actions may seem insignificant in the moment, but over time they accumulate into a powerful force that shapes character and destiny. In the long journey of life, character is the field where every seed of action eventually bears fruit. Perhaps the greatest lesson we can take from this ancient principle is responsibility. Instead of asking why life treats us unfairly, we can begin asking a more empowering question. What seeds am I planting today? When we live with this awareness, every moment becomes an opportunity to create a better future, not only for ourselves, but also for the people around us. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you believe that the actions we take today truly shape the life we experience in the future? Please share your perspective in the comment section so everyone can read and learn from each other's ideas. And if you found this reflection meaningful, consider subscribing to the channel to support the journey. Your support gives us the motivation to continue creating more thoughtful and inspiring content in the future.